Krishna! Oh, forgot my tea lock. Oh well, I just make believe there's tea lock on there. I forgot. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Ram. Water tea lock. I should put water tea lock. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Om Keshavaya Namaha. Water tea lock. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. I highly recommend somehow for devotees to find a way to go into solitude at least for a little while. Like people that are working, they find time for a vacation once a year. They go for a week somewhere. Well, find some time for solitude. Highly recommend it. Find time for fasting and find time for solitude. I was just reading, Prabhupada was saying how silence is where, it was in the Gita, chapter 11 somewhere, I think. Or either Krishna book, The Killing of Dantavakra. Anyway, silence is very conducive for making advancement spiritually. Silence meaning not so much input from all these different sources, all this exciting stuff. Silence means chanting Hare Krishna and going deep within. And you'd be really surprised what you find there. You'd be really surprised. Putting the light shine in on what's still stuck in there. No matter how much, quote unquote, service you've done, until there's actually this cleansing that goes on, it still remains just building and building and building credits to actually be able to engage in devotional service. You're just building credits, which is good. You get a big bank account. That's good. But at some point, actually have to cash in on those credits. And like Prabhupada was saying in Nectar Devotion, maybe it was Nectar Devotion, chapter 46, Stimulation for Ecstatic Devotional Service. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. He says, in the beginning, when someone begins to practice devotional service, for them, the actual service that they're doing, they consider that devotional service. Like sweeping the floor. Oh, that's devotional service. And it is. Or collecting money. Oh, that's devotional service. And it is. But it's the beginning stage. Later on, devotional service becomes an internal experience where the emotions and the feelings and a relationship is beginning, a spiritual relationship is beginning to develop with the personality of Godhead. Radha Krishna. The supreme personality of Godhead. Radha Krishna in Vraj. That's where all of this is going. That's Lord Chaitanya's movement, and it becomes internalized in order to get there. It's not just how many books I distributed, but that's good. This is one Christmas marathon that was like a super blockbuster marathon. Millions of Prabhupada's books went out all over the planet. And the different leaders assembled to give the results after the Christmas marathon. They were so excited to tell Prabhupada how many books went out. Prabhupada heard the figures. And it was wonderful. And his comment was, double it. Double it. There was no way to double it. It was the highest point in book distribution ever. But his comment was, Now double it. Hare Krishna. Indicating that doing that service, like considering devotional service, moving things around and doing things, and that's how I'm serving, without getting that internal awakening, internal awakening, that love for Godhead, awakening those emotions, then you just have to do more and more and more and more and more until you get enough pious credits, devotional credits, Krishna, to reach that point where, is there something more? Is there something else? Or to reach the point where you can't do it anymore, either physically, mentally, whatever. And ask that question, just like somebody suffering in the material world, disease, old age, death, nothing's going right, no matter what they try to do, it doesn't solve the problem, and they ask the famous question, what's missing? Why am I suffering? Then they can hear something. Oh, you're not your body. You're a spiritual being. The solutions to life aren't on the material platform. Then they can hear that, and they can begin to make some progress in actually solving the problems of life: birth, death, old age, and disease. So it reaches a point in devotional activities, under the guidance of a spiritual master, running around doing things. And no matter how much they do, they're expected to do more, but then there reaches a point where they can't. It's physically impossible. Double it. It was impossible. It couldn't do it. So then the question has to come is there something else? Is there something more? And that's when it can go internal. Yes, there is. Getting to that internal experience where the feelings and the emotions come. So I've been going through a lot of internal and emotional cleansing, doing fasting, which I'm going to do again next week. I'm going to do another week of watermelon. That's very cleansing also. So I won't be cooking very much. I don't cook anyway, but I won't be doing much cooking at all, and I won't be eating like solid food. So I'll have a lot more energy for chanting and hearing and remembering. But actually eating takes a lot of energy. I mean, when you eat, you get a little tired, I'm going to take a nap, I just ate something. So this solitude and this internal cleansing is also very purifying. And different things are coming out in solitude. So lately it's been about mother issues. Getting some insight on mother issues. And, oh man, I'm so thankful. Thank you. Thank you, Radha Krishna. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, that I can get some insight on this. And until the mother issues are resolved, no one's really going anywhere very much. You can continue running around doing things and amassing pious credits and devotional credits, but until the mother issues are resolved. And I'm looking at here in the West, I'm not an isolated case. I'm in isolation now by my desire to really focus and churn this and get it cleaned out so I can move forward in Krishna consciousness. But especially in the West, India's not excluded, but especially in the West, the way people are conceived has built-in mother issues for the baby, for the child. There's built-in mother problems. Mostly people are good-hearted and they want to have a nice child. And they don't necessarily overindulge in sexual activity, although they may, just for the heck of it. I know my parents used to, because I was a child, I could hear them in the other room. They didn't know I could hear them, but I could hear them. And it's not necessarily for conceiving a child. They'll use some contraceptive, and they just want to have that feeling of sexual fun, material, bodily pleasure. So sometimes there's an accident. The condom broke. It was the wrong time of month, and there's a pregnancy. So they didn't really want the child. The child was born out of some kind of lustful activity, material consciousness. They didn't really want the child. So that's a problem. Maybe they already have 2 or 3 children, and oh no, another one. Or maybe they didn't want children just yet. They're too young, or they're not established enough yet. And uh-oh, here's a baby. So the mother, in the beginning, she actually doesn't want the child. Now, sometimes they do abortion and they just kill the child so they can go on with life. Sometimes there's that. Or the child is born before the couple is married and you got to get an abortion. Or all different things. But it's mother issues. Not so much father issues, but mother issues. Because the baby is within the mother's body and is, for 9 months, exposed to her consciousness. What she eats, what she thinks, her fears, her adrenaline rushes, her anger, her rage. The baby is exposed to all of that within the body. And not so much Hare Krishna. A lot of other stuff. Daytime soap operas. Whatever. So there's mother issues. So the mother, she will accept, okay, I have a baby. All right, let me serve the baby. But there are mother issues. Sometimes the mother doesn't surrender very nicely. In the whole time the child is growing up, she's feeling, oh, it's a burden. If I didn't have this baby, my life would have been different. I got this kid. Sometimes there's a divorce. The father, he's more attracted to another woman and he runs off and leaves her alone with the baby. Didn't have this baby, I could have had a life. So there's a lot of mother issues. Or the mother is a little emotionally disturbed for maybe the way she was raised. And she can't really give much love and affection to her child, although she wants to. Maybe she has a substance abuse problem. She's an alcoholic or takes some other kind of drugs, either legal or illegal. Maybe she's not happy with her husband and she's cheating on him, and the child is at home and she goes out and she has an affair with some other man, or there's divorce and then she's married and then remarried and then that doesn't work, and then there's a child from that union, now she's got 2 of them, and then that divorces and then she marries somebody. So there's mother issues. And the mother issues are very intense for the child because the child and the mother are very closely related For 9 months, the child is forming, the body's forming within the body of the mother. And then when the baby comes out, the mother is the intimate one that changes the diapers, holds the baby. That's what stops the baby from crying. There's not all that much breastfeeding going on in the West because it gets in the way of things, especially if the mother has to work or they're just not inclined to breastfeed, usually, a lot of mothers. So they do the bottle thing. Here's the bottle. So there's a lot of mother issues. So crying, when the baby cries, who comes? It's not usually the father. Sometimes there's a father who'll come and comfort the baby. Sometimes the father has to raise the baby, and he has to be the mother too. But ordinarily, it's the mother who comes when the baby cries. And she picks up the baby, she holds the baby, and if she's doing breastfeeding, she'll feed the baby. As soon as she puts a nipple in the baby's mouth, he stops crying, he starts drinking milk, and he feels secure. He's getting nourishment, he's getting love, he's getting attention, or she is getting love, attention. So, especially in Western culture, there are a lot of mother issues. And people are growing up with a lot of mother issues. So even for devotees, when they take to this process of bhakti yoga, they still have a lot of mother issues. So I was thinking about how some of the symptoms of ecstatic love are crying. And I was thinking about crying. When the devotee is crying, are they crying for God? I'm seeing the crying a little differently. But Prabhupada says that it's like the baby crying for the mother. When chanting Hare Krishna, with tears in the eyes, it's the baby crying for the mother. Mother Hara. Because Mother Hara brings the baby to Krishna, Father. Mother Hara is connected to the Father. It's Father, Mother, Mother, Father. So if you look at the female form, the mother form, and the male form, father form, the father is not so inclined to crying. Sometimes the father makes the baby cry or the child cry by giving him a good spanking because he did something wrong. All right, now cry. And my father used to say that, I'll give you something to cry about. That's the father. Strong, supplying everything, bringing in the income, intelligent, knows how to do things, masculine, powerful. But then you look at the mother figure, and she's nurturing, and she can relate to the baby's crying. She hears the baby crying. Immediately she goes to comfort the baby or the child. So the crying, oh, you're crying for Krishna. No, that's not what the crying that's going on. Krishna's Vishnu, the all-powerful, the source of everything, the supreme being, the killer of demons. He appears as Nishingadev, the killer Anikashipu. He appears as Matsya to save the Vedas. He appeared because of his devotee, King Satyavrata. He appears as Buddha to save the animals and redirect people to a path that will allow them to make some advancement spiritually by not misusing the Vedic injunctions. He appeared. He appears as the king of Dwarka. And in Vrindavan, he appears as the cowherd boy. He's the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, who was raised by Nanda and Yasoda. And he's the instigator amongst the young girls. So you're not crying for Krishna. It's not. You're crying for your mother. You're crying for Radha. You're crying for devotion. That's where the crying is. And it's a mother issue. Mother cow, Mother Earth, the wife of the teacher, spiritual teacher, if he has a wife, the Vedas, mother. So you go to the Vedas to find out who the father is. The Vedas are like mother. They are mother. Mother Vedas. Who's the father? So it's not so much crying for Krishna, crying for Vishnu. It's not that. It's crying for devotion. Please engage me. Oh, energy of the Lord. That's where the tears are. Oh, energy of the Lord. Oh, Mother Hara. Oh, Radha. Please engage me in serving Krishna. You're the embodiment of all these devotional emotions. It's a nectar of devotion is a literary incarnation of Radharani. What do you find in nectar devotion? All these emotions and feelings. Rupa Goswami analyzes everything and discusses this ocean of devotion. Nectar of devotion. Ocean. The ocean of the nectar of devotion. So crying, there won't be any crying for Krishna until the mother issues are resolved. They have to come to light. And Hare Krishna, mother. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, till this feminine side, the issues are resolved from abuse and being abused, having this kind of upbringing that didn't allow for nice connection with mothers who were suffering themselves from not having nice connections. Anyway, it goes on. It can go on for generations. So now it's the opportunity, it's here to break these cycles, these karmic cycles. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. So that's the kind of thing I've been looking at. And Krishna, really thankful to be able to see that. I'm not actually crying for Krishna. I'm crying for Mother. I noticed that with both my parents. When they reached their 90s, and my mother, she was 90 years old, or 91, I think. And her whole life, she was tortured by the unsatisfying connection with her mother. And her poor mother couldn't. She had her own problems. But it passed through the generations. And to the end of her life, she was crying for her mother. She wasn't crying for my father. She was crying for her mother. And my father, same thing. He lost his mother when he was 9. She died of rheumatic fever. And she was bedridden her whole life. He told me he was he was conceived while she was in bed. His father crawled into bed with her and they conceived a child while she was bedridden with rheumatic fever. But anyway, Hare Krishna. He lost her when he was 9, so he was very close with her. He was the youngest. There were 4 children. He was the youngest. And she showed him a lot of special favor. And he would do the cooking for the family. He would do the laundry for the family. So he was engaged in service under her direction. She was engaging him. He was very attached to her. So at the end of his life, he also was crying. Not for his father, for his mother. Krishna. I mean, like, I was attending to him. He was a lot of hospitalizations toward the end. He kept falling down. Every time he fell down, he had to go in the hospital for exams. I mean, he used to fall down 100 times. And every time he landed on his head. It was very hard to control the situation. He was a very independent person. So you just do the best you can to pick up the pieces, but without, disturbing his sense of I'm in control of things. So one time he was lying in the hospital bed. He had fallen down. They were doing exams. He's in his 90s. He's supposed to be 98. He's in his 90s. And he's lying there. And he looks at me. He wasn't speaking. He looks at me and he goes. And I was like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? I must have done something wrong. Why did he do that? What did I do wrong? And then I realized he was telling me, I'm strong. I'm strong. I can deal with anything. I'm strong. That's what he was saying. So that's Father. I'm strong. Hare Krishna. The crying is for Mother. Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's like sometimes I don't, at least in the family structures I was familiar with, that if the child did something wrong during the day, then the mother wouldn't necessarily punish the child. She would show her dissatisfaction and say, wait till your father comes home. You just wait. I'm going to tell him what you did. You just wait till he comes home. And then father comes home, he's angry, gives the child, over the knee, a little pat, pat, pat on the behind. The child's crying, goes back to the mother. So, Father is not impressed by crying. Mother's heart is touched by crying. Father's heart's not touched by crying. Like I say, my father used to say, I'll give you something to cry about. Stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Okay, this is Bhagavad Gita as it is. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's translated by Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada. Very authoritative. Original Sanskrit verses, English transliterations, word for word, and extensive purports or explanations. And this is chapter 12, Devotional Service. So Arjuna has asked to see the universe. He doesn't want to fight. And he's asked to see the universal form of the Lord. Because in the previous chapters, Krishna's telling him how powerful he is. He's telling him the soul never dies, and we're not these bodies. And he's explaining about the different yoga systems in order to reach transcendence. Some people, they meditate this way, some people practice that way. And he's going through the whole gamut because up to previously, Krishna was just Arjuna's friend, a wonderful friend and a cousin. Now, because Arjuna's perplexed and he's confused and he doesn't want to fight, so he's accepting Krishna not just as a friend, friendly advice, but as his spiritual master. Okay, I accept you. That I see who you are. Yeah, and I accept you. Now please instruct me what to do. I accept you. So it's teaching him, taking him all through everything, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and then describing his opulences. So then Arjuna says, he's hearing all of this and he's accepting it. I accept you. But I want to see, I want to perceive your universal form. I want to see that. So Krishna reveals to him, and it's overwhelming. There's unlimited eyes, unlimited mouths, and Krishna's energies are everywhere. He pervades every atom. It's like, if anybody's ever done an LSD trip, it's like this would be the mother of them all. It just is overwhelming. It's too much. So it said that also anyone else who was spiritually awake and focused on Krishna as his pastimes are taking place on the planet here, they also saw that form. Arjuna wasn't imagining it, he was revealing it, but only those who were Krishna conscious to one degree or another could see it. And everyone, the demigods, the great sages, they were all seeing this pastime of Krishna, revealing the universal form to Arjuna, and everyone was petrified. It was frightening. There was mouths with sharp teeth and killing all the armies, killing Drona, killing Bhisma, killing Karna, crushing them. All the armies were going into this form and it was devastating. It was a horrible form to see. So Arjuna says, okay, this is enough. He says, oh, who are you? What do you want? And Krishna explains, I'm time, and I've come to destroy the worlds. And everyone but you and the Pandavas will be destroyed. And Arjuna says, okay. And he says, what is your mission? Krishna says, I want you to fight. Which is the one thing Arjuna doesn't want to do. So Krishna has to show this huge, horrifying, Arjuna has to be absolutely 100% stunned. He's, okay. All right. I won't, okay. Going to the forest and eating berries may not be such a good idea at this point. Okay. But we're still not there yet. There's more to go before Arjuna actually agrees to fight. So Krishna's going through all of this. So then Arjuna says, okay, but I can't tolerate this much more. It's intolerable. Please, let me see your other forms. The Vishnu form will be fine. Well, I can see you as Vishnu and relate to it. Okay. So then Krishna reveals Vishnu form, and then his two-armed form, Krishna, is Arjuna's friend, sitting there on the chariot. So now the conversation continues. And this is the chapter Devotional Service. Arjuna uvacha evam satata yuktaye bhaktas tvam paripashate. Okay, the meter is important to sing this, because I find during the day the meter itself, because it's kind of a song, then it starts playing even though there isn't any words, and then I put the words in. Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktastram Paripashyate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vitama Da 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 da. Krishna. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktastram Paripashyate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vitama. Arjuna inquired, which is considered to be more perfect? Those who are properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Is Arjuna still trying to get out of fighting, or what? If I meditate on the impersonal Brahman, I won't have to fight. So, which is considered to be more perfect, Arjuna? Krishna? Your devotional service, like fighting, and it's the thing I don't want to do, or your impersonal Brahman? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay, so it's part of the purport is Arjuna would like to know which of these two types of transcendentalists is more perfect in knowledge. In other words, he's clarifying his own position because he's attached to the personal form of Krishna. He's not attached to the impersonal Brahman, but he wants to know whether his position is secure, because he's about to do something that's really horrendous. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. The impersonal manifestation, whether in the material world or the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time. And there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Vesha Mano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upashate Shradaya Pariopitas Te Me Yukta Tamamata. The Blessed Lord said, he whose mind is fixed on my personal form, always engaged in worshiping me with great transcendental faith, is considered by me to be the most perfect. In answer, Prabhupada's purport to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says, he who concentrates upon his personal form, who worships him with faith and devotion, is considered to be most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities, because everything is done by Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, Sometimes he hears, he reads books about Krishna, he cooks prasadam, or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna. Sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi, trance. Ye trek sharam anirdesham avyaktam paripashate sarvatragam achincham cha kutastam achalam dhruvam saniyam yendriyagramam sarvatra samabudaya te pra nuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hite rata. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses, being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. Hare Krishna. Klesho dikaratastesham avyakta shakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukam deha bhavir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. We have a body with senses. How are you going to get beyond form, senses? You have to eat, how are you going to get beyond all of that? Krishna, ye tu sarvani karmani mayi sanyasya para ananye naiva yogena mam jayanta upashate te shamaham samudarta mitu samsara sagarat babami na chirat parta maye vashita chetasam. For one who worships me, giving up all his activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, always meditating upon me, who has fixed his mind upon me, O son of Pritha, for him I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. The conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is stated in the 18th chapter, Sarvadhaman Parityatya Mamikam Saranam Vraja Aham Tvam Sara Pavibhyo Mokshai Shami Masuchaha. One should give up all other processes of self-realization and simply execute devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That will enable one to reach the highest perfection of life. There's no need for one to consider the sinful actions of his past life, because the Supreme Lord fully takes charge of him. Therefore, one should not try futilely to deliver himself in spiritual realization. Let everyone take shelter of the Supreme Omnipotent Godhead Krishna. That's the highest perfection of life. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Mayeva manad adatsva mayi buddhim niveshaya evasis mayeva ata urdvam nasamsaya. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always, without a doubt. Prabhupada's purport: one who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relationship with the Supreme Lord, so there is no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane, he lives in Krishna. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. Therefore, when a devotee chants Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. There's no difference between Hare Krishna and Radha Krishna. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts these edibles, and the devotee becomes Krishnaized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Gita and in other Vedic literatures. Ata chittam samadatum nasaknosi mai stiram abhyasa yogina tato mam ichaptum dhananjaya. So, the previous verse, just fix your mind upon me, engage all your intelligence in me, you will live in me always without a doubt. Now, the next verse, my dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, you will develop a desire to attain to me. So the straight sauce, the real direct thing, fix your mind on me, engage your intelligence in me, and you'll live in me without a doubt. But if you can't do that without deviation, follow regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, you will develop a desire to attain to me. You will develop the desire to attain to me. The desire to attain to me. Prabhupada's purport: in this verse, two different processes of Bhakti Yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For the second class, there are different prescribed rules, regulations, which one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified, and in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. Purified senses, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master also is not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there's no question of love. But for the spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses. So the senses, when they're purified, they come in direct contact with Krishna, the purified senses. This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart, and their love of God is manifested in different ways, but it is contaminated by the material association. Now the material association has to be purified, and that dormant natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That's the whole process. To practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. So, Prabhupada is going to be describing the path of rules and regulations here. And I'm looking at this different scholars, different pundits, different kavis, they toss about what is the origin of the jiva? Where does the jiva come from? So, that he was never actually in the spiritual world. He's never actually had a loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, and that since time immemorial he's been floating around in the Tatastha somewhere, impersonal something, and now he's sprouting. So there's that argument. But here, we don't see that indicated anywhere in Prabhupada's books. It's always back to Godhead. Revive our original relationship with the Lord. And we see it here again in this small paragraph. Love of God is dormant in everyone's heart. It's manifested in different ways, but it's contaminated by material association. Material association has to be purified. And that natural love for Krishna has to be revived. So we don't see that there's an indication. They say, they never fell from the spiritual sky. Once you're in the spiritual world, you can never fall. And Krishna says in Gita, once going there, one never comes back. So how is it we're in the material world? And if we go back to the spiritual sky, are we going to fall again? See, all these questions come out. One way Prabhupada would answer that was, you'll understand everything once you get there. For now, just chant Hare Krishna, hear about Krishna, engage in devotion, practice engaging your senses and serving Krishna, and then when you get there, you'll understand. It's like you're drowning in the ocean, and they come, and there's a little boat, and they throw the life preserver out, the little donut thing, they throw it out, and you don't grab a hold of it. You just say, how did I get here? What happened? Well, never mind, just grab a hold. Come on, grab a hold of it. We'll pull you in. We'll talk about that later. You're not in a position right now. You're drowning. You're not in a position to simply sit there and try to understand, well, how did I get here in this thing where I'm drowning? Never mind. Take this. We'll talk about it later. So that's one way Prabhupada would deal with those kinds of questions is, you're not in a position right now to simply try to mentally, intellectually get to the bottom of how did you get here. Never mind. This is how you get out. We'll talk about it later. You'll understand later. But there does seem to be an indication here that it's a matter of revival and not that we never had a relationship with Krishna. Dormant love within the heart. Revived. He doesn't say germinated, like there's a little seed. It's never been a tree before, but it's a seed, and then it germinates. The seed isn't being revived. It never sprouted to begin with. That's not the kind of wording Prabhupada uses. He says that it's covered over and contaminated by immaterial, illusory energy, and there's opportunity to revive consciousness of Krishna. Everything's based on desire, so Jiva wants to, anyway, not in a position to understand yet. Someday you'll understand. When you grow up, you'll understand. How many mothers have said that to children that have asked questions that there's no way to answer them properly? Someday you'll understand. Someday you'll understand. Right now you can't understand. You're just a little child. But someday you'll understand. Krishna. So if you can't just always remember Krishna, then you can practice regulated devotional service, Vaidhi Bhakti. If you can't be on the platform of Raganuga, where you have some attachment, natural attachment already for the personality of Godhead, then just keep hearing, take shelter of being guided by a bona fide representative of Krishna, and do service, keep hearing, keep chanting, and you will develop a desire to attain Krishna. You'll develop the desire. It doesn't say, by following rules and regulations, you'll attain me. It doesn't say that. It says, by following rules and regulations, you'll develop a desire to attain me. Krishna. Good stuff. Abhyase yasamartosi mat karma paramo bhava madartam api karmani kurvan siddhyam avapsisi. If you cannot practice regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you'll come to the perfect stage. So if you can't follow rules and regulations, you just try to do some work for me. Work for me. Prabhupada's purport, one who is not able even to practice regulative principles of bhakti yoga, under the guidance of a spiritual master, can still be drawn to the perfectional stage. It doesn't say reach the perfectional stage, it says can be drawn to by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of chapter 11. So let's take a look. 55th verse of chapter 11. Is that the verse that's like the essence of the Gita? 55th verse. Yeah, that's the one I think Prabhupada says is the essence. Yeah. Mat karma krin mat paramo mad bhatta sangha vajita nirvaira sarvabhuteshu yasamameti pandava. My dear Arjuna, one who is engaged in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of previous activities and from mental speculation, who's friendly to every living entity, certainly comes to me. So that's the spirit in which one can work for Krishna. If they can't follow regulative principles and they're not on the platform where they're always experiencing some loving relationship with the personality of Godhead, Krishna. How to do this work. So that's the spirit of doing the work. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in propagating Krishna consciousness and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice regulated principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor, just as in business. One requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna. And that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness. He can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the result of such activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love of God, wherein one can become perfect. So, Krishna says, just always think of me. Fix your mind on me. Engage all your intelligence in me, and you'll live in me. If you can't do that, then follow regulative principles under the guidance of a spiritual master, and you'll develop the desire to attain me. And if you can't do that, then do some work. There are many devotees who are engaged in propagating Krishna consciousness. Offer some facility to help. Utility principle. What were the four things? There are four basic things. You say, preaching is the essence, purity is the force, books are the basis, and utility is the principle. So purity is the force. It's pure devotion. Preaching is the essence, books are the basis, and utility is the principle. So you can be strong on the utility principle. Just fix your mind on me, engage your intelligence in me, you'll live in me. That's the force, the purity. If you cannot fix your mind on me without deviation, then follow regulative principles. You'll develop a desire to attain me. I don't know how it fits in those four things. But this definitely connects with the utility principle. Work. Do something to help propagating. Preaching is the essence. Do something to help. That's the utility principle. Ahaitad apyashaktoshi kartum mad yogamashrita sarva karma palatyagam tata kuru yatat mavan. If, however, you're unable to work in this consciousness, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. It may be that one is unable to even sympathize with the activities of Krishna consciousness because of social, familial, religious considerations, or some other impediments. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objection from family members or so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. So if you can't help propagate Krishna consciousness, then to give some of the fruits of your activities to a good cause. Help the poor. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices, special functions of the Punmandi, or special work in which the result of one's previous action may be applied. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. So at least that much he's not using for his personal sense gratification. That is also recommended here because by practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually, and in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. The pious becomes pious. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the result of his action. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc., may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. If one decides to sacrifice for the Supreme Cause, even if he does not know that the Supreme Cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Cause by the sacrificial method. Hare Krishna. So this continues on with other things people can do if they can't. Just always remember Krishna. Be on that spontaneous platform. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Well, I think I'll chant a little more. Try to absorb what I'm hearing. Try to make a little more advancement.